Welcome to the Historic Preservation Commission meeting of February 10, 2022 of the Decatur Historic Preservation Commission. I will call roll with each commission member answering present. John Allison.
Present.
Rebecca Poole Burns.
Present.
Dodie Hall.
Present.
Barbara Kelly.
Present.
Bill Stone.
Present.
Jacob Woods.
Present.
I'm Lynn Schubert, and we have a quorum present. Dr. Swope is the city's preservation specialist. Thank you to everyone who's attending today. Your involvement in this commission's proceeding is vital to the effectiveness of this process. There's a copy of the agenda out front if you would like one. Historic district designation means your neighborhoods have been recognized by the United States government, the state of Alabama, and the city of Decatur as being architecturally or historically significant to our community. Historic districts are not created to prevent changes, but rather to ensure that the proposed changes are appropriate to the individual property and the districts as a whole. The Commission's responsibility is to review the appropriateness of all proposed changes. The Preservation Commission has written standards and regulations that guide our review and decision making. These guidelines and the Commission's decisions have the force of city ordinance. You can access our guidelines along with application forms on the city's website. Our hearing process is as follows. Staff will present the applications. When they read your name and property address, please be prepared to come to the podium. Staff will present the application and staff assessment of each request. The staff assessment results from a review of the application from someone who exceeds federal qualifications as published in Title 36 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 61. When staff is finished presenting the application item, the applicant and/or designated representative will then state their name and address and provide any additional information or comments regarding that application item. The Commission may ask clarifying questions of the applicant at this time. Next, we will hear any public comments on that particular application item only. After public comment has closed, the chair will entertain a motion and the Commission will discuss and dispense with that application item. Staff will then proceed to the next application item and so forth. An approved certificate of appropriateness, or COA, will be issued in the form of an email that copies both the applicant and the building department approximately 1 week after this hearing. The document will outline and reaffirm what was approved and that the project has met the guidelines of the Commission. A COA must be issued before a building permit can be obtained. If any changes to your project are anticipated after the COA is issued, it is the responsibility of the homeowner or to contact staff, and she will help guide you. In some cases, you may be required to submit the changes for review and issuance of a new COA. Denied COAs will be sent via certified mail to the property owner's address, filed with the Morgan County Revenue Commissioner's Office, with details outlining the reasons for the denial and additional information. If your project or a portion of the project is denied and you are not issued a COA, you will be issued a letter stating the reasons for denial. You may resubmit an application with revised plans for the next meeting. There is an appeal process for a denied COA as well, which is spelled out in the municipal ordinance under sections 18-25 and 18-92. After all applications are heard, the Commission will entertain general comments from the public limited to 3 minutes per individual. Caroline, I guess we're ready to proceed.
Thank you. Right, so in terms of the minutes from January 13th, I need review and approval of those. I need a motion.
We have a motion.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Fast track COAs since the January 6th meeting. It's winter, so it's been nice and slow. We only had a handful. 614 Gordon, Mr. Boyette for a new roof. 423 Walnut Street, Mr. Cantron for replacing kind rotting porch roof supports balustrade. And 614 Gordon, also Mr. Boyette, he had a second-story balustrade that was rotting. It was a replacement in kind. So our first COA tonight is 210 Walnut Street, Northeast, Mr. Cole. On this particular COA, Rebecca is going to recuse herself, so she's actually going to go sit in the audience because she knows them personally, they're friends.
I think that might apply to
Well, I guess the way we've done it is legal has always told us before if they are constantly being entertained in your house and you are with them in their house, then that could be construed as a conflict of interest. So she has
They haven't invited me.
stepped down. So, So the background on this one, this is a one-story folk Victorian built circa 1887. It's a contributing structure within the Bank Street Old Decatur National Register District. It's one of the oldest buildings within the district. The front detailing appears to be an early 20th century remodel with that porch. House has been vacant recently. Property has not been kept to code. Mr. Cole purchased the property late summer. It has currently been flagged by community development for property maintenance violations. And here are some of the interior photos. Mr. Cole purchased the property from the Long family late summer, early fall. I had actually been asked in July of 2021 about possible demolition by the Long family. And I've also put Mr. Cole in touch with a potential purchaser for the building, but there are concerns over the viability of that, and the purchaser has not been able to look at it yet. He has mentioned that one of those companies that's out there that will reach out to you to try to buy houses, because they say they buy ugly houses, they've already come and inspected it and it doesn't meet their criteria, so they were not interested in this particular property. And he is aware of the federal and state historic tax credits and the ability to use them, but that is something that at this point he is not interested in. Decatur's Design Review Standards, number 17, demolition and relocation. Number 1, not recommended. Demolition of contributing buildings and outbuildings is inappropriate unless warranted by structural conditions, economic hardship as defined by city ordinance, or where the public safety is endangered. Economic hardship is where the cost of rehabilitating a building would equal or exceed the market value of the building. It does not address the finances of the owner. It addresses the economic feasibility of the rehabilitation work for a building that is under duress and needs significant investment. The city has a distinct ordinance on this, section 1825, that addresses these requirements. For economic hardship, and they are listed out as each application for removal or demolition shall be considered taken into account economic hardship. The commission may solicit expert testimony or require that, at the expense of the applicant, submissions be made concerning any or all of the following information before it makes a determination on the application. Number 1, estimate of the cost of the proposed alteration, demolition, or removal, and estimate of any additional costs that would be incurred to comply with recommendations of the commission for necessary changes for COA. 2, a report from a licensed engineer or architect with experience in rehabilitation as to the structural soundness of any structures on the property and their suitability for rehabilitation. 3, estimated market value of the property in its current condition after completion of proposed redevelopment, alteration, demolition, and changes after any changes recommended by the commission, and in the case of proposed demolition, after renovation of the existing property for continued use. Or 4, in the case of proposed demolition, an estimate from an architect, developer, real estate consultant, appraiser, or other real estate professional experienced in rehabilitation as to the economic feasibility of rehabilitation or reuse of the existing structure on the property. So applicant has submitted numerous photos and information requested in the ordinance, particularly under items A3 and 4 is listed above. And that is everything that staff has on this application. So I will turn it over to Mr. Cole and he can go up to the podium.
I haven't felt like this in a long time. It's a feeling when you go to court for the first time and you're a little unprepared. You're not sure what the jury wants to hear, so if any questions, y'all feel free to bail me out at any time. Let me give you the background. We bought Fort Nash in 15, I think, and moved in, and the Longs lived there together, I guess, for about a year. Afterwards, they separated. About 6 months after that, so I'm going to say middle of 17, it's been completely abandoned since then. Not sure what was going on, didn't really inquire too much, and it's just gradually, become worse and worse. Middle of COVID, I'm sitting on the deck, and what finally just occurred to me as I'm watching in the twilight the coyotes come out from around the house and under the house, I thought, all right, now we got a problem. I started trying to contact the Longs, found out they were going through a divorce, went through their attorneys, eventually got in touch with them while they were literally in mediation to buy the house, which is why we got it when we did for the price we did. Probably overpaid for it considering all the stuff going on with it, but we felt like it was necessary to get control of it. just for the neighborhood. Bought it not necessarily for the purpose of tearing it down, although that was at the forefront of my mind when I bought it. Was interested in anybody that might be able to do anything else with it if, I guess they were who you'd want to live next to, maybe would be the way to put that, because they are directly across Walnut Street from us. I mean, where we walk out, we walk into their driveway practically, have to back up into it. So, you know, it's very important to me what happens there. If the guy doing Bank Street was interested in it, and apparently he wants to look at it, it doesn't sound like he's too interested though. If he wants to look at it and put the money into it, it's going to take to do what Whitney Clemens has said it would take to make it viable, then hey, great. You know, assuming he wants to pay me for it too, you know, that's great. I don't anticipate that being the case. As Ms. Swope said, the judge, I don't even know who these people are. They called me and texted me 3 or 4 times about, hey, we buy houses. We've seen either the deed or the letter. Now, in all fairness, the first letter I saw about the dilapidation of the house from the city was more than a year before I bought it. I just inherited the letters, so we didn't let it get that way. Just want to make sure that's clear. They contacted us. I texted a couple times, and you know, I've seen the signs, usually handwritten on a pole. So I decided I want to talk to these guys. I'll talk to them. Communicated for a couple weeks back and forth. You know, told them what I'd paid for it, and said, if y'all want to look at it, that's fine. I was out of town. I said, look, it's actually unlocked. You can walk through it if you want to. There's nothing in it I'm really worried about. In fact, I was hoping somebody would go in there and just take all the stuff out of it. So it's been unlocked. I'll walk through it 2 or 3 times a week just to make sure there's no vagrancy going on, but I don't think a vagrant would want to live in it in its current condition anyway. So they apparently came through. I got a text, would you call us about it? And followed up with a text, said, yeah, are y'all interested? And they said, we don't think it is something we're willing to invest in to do. So that was my first, and that was, I want to say November, December, somewhere in that time frame. Had some other stuff going on. It's kind of got put on the back burner, and we've been able to get to this point now. Another reason, one of the questions I guess I anticipate is what do y'all plan on doing with it? The house, and I don't know the address, John and Dodie, y'all may know it. It's the yellow house that faces Oak across Walnut from us on the corner. It has also been vacant for, I'm going to say 3 years. I see the current owner. I think they're still in town. I looked him up online on probate or revenue, and they've got a house in deep southeast, Penny Lane, Summer Lane, somewhere over there. So I think he's still around because the yard's being maintained. Nothing else is. I saw him after he moved out and hadn't seen him for 6 or 8 months and said, what are you doing? Would you like to potentially sell this house at some point? And he said, yeah, I think we would like to do that, but we're not ready to do it yet. Well, that's a perfect backyard for, this house is a perfect backyard for that house. As we're dealing with some aging parents and grandparents and things like that, that has been an idea for that house. You know, it'd be real convenient to move them in at some point, but obviously we want to get control of it, and y'all may or may not know there's some unusual dynamics with the fence and that shed in the back. That fence is the property line, and the shed does this over the fence. So I've talked to him about that 2 years ago, and he said, well, if you were ever able to get it, you need to know about this. And he told me about it, and I said, well, if I get this house, the yellow house, I'm pretty sure I'll do what it takes to get this one because we want to combine them and do those kind of things. So, you know, that would be, at this point, assuming that there's no angel investor that wants to come in and pour money into what I deem to be a money pit, that would be the plan, would be to right now acquire that property, take it down, get it cleaned up, work on this fella on the other one, and turn that into one lot, if that's something that's feasible. I think it would add value, certainly to what I'm going to call the yellow house property, because it makes it almost a full-size lot. I know it's kind of interesting how the Shaws are behind us, and I think they've got a larger lot than it seems, because part of that one is behind this blue house too. So there's all kind of things I think you could do to make that a little more attractive for the resale for both of the yellow houses and the ones the Shaws occupy now in the future, in terms of the shape of the yard and that kind of thing. But the most important thing to me was to get control of that property, because of the condition that it was in and getting worse, and then the nuisance that it was causing in terms of the wildlife and potential for vagrancy, because I'd seen some unsavory characters in that, looking through the windows and that kind of thing before. So, that's potential. That's where we are. I think you've got the price estimates and on what it would take to rehab it. Whitney Clemens, who's a realtor, I think everybody knows in town, said if you want to get it to what it needs to be able to rent it out, it's $200,000. I forget the guy's name. His last name's Hill, the construction guy that came in and gave us an estimate. He said this is conservative, because I'm pretty sure that you've got lead paint and asbestos, which I haven't even put in here. And his was $70,000, not including those things, on a property that, if you're lucky, is going to yield potentially a resale of $90,000. So that's where we are on it.
Quick question on
Yeah.
the shed.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Do you own that?
Half of it.
We own half of it,
Half of it.
and there's a wall down the
Is
middle
that
of
gonna
it.
go with the house?
Half of it.
Is
Half
half
of
of
it.
the villages?
Yeah, I mean, it literally is half and
Yeah.
half with a wall.
Yeah, I mean, this is the fence, and this is the shed, and the fence is the property line. I mean, I haven't looked at done the title work to see why in the world somebody did that, but
Somebody lost a poker bet or something.
it's been that way for a long time, actually, but
The shed's
I don't
actually
know.
in better shape than the house.
it made me think that maybe somewhere down the line, those lots were combined, and that went up, or maybe they were relatives or something, but I haven't had time to do the due diligence on why it's in that shape that it is, but.
So your plans forward is to leave it vacant now until perhaps get that yellow house?
Yeah, that's
And then
ideally. Now,
whatever it takes.
granted,
No,
if,
the house we want to take
well, she said leave it
No, the
vacant.
yellow house.
Oh, yellow house. Well, we don't own the yellow house.
I know you don't.
Right,
but
right.
You're right, that's your idea. Okay.
Yeah, the immediate plan would be to take the blue house, or whatever color we're calling it now, purple, 210 Walnut Street house down, and work towards acquiring, the yellow house, and then,
it, revamp it.
right.
But that lot would be just grass.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Like a green space.
Yeah.
So basically you would like permission to, or you want us to say it's okay to demolish it, but if someone comes through at the last minute, hey,
Yeah, if this,
yeah, we want it.
what's the guy's name, Yogi?
Yeah.
If the Yogi guy from Tennessee wants to come down and, I mean, look, I've got no objection to some rehab work going on. I don't anticipate that's gonna happen, but, stranger things, people with a lot of money, they can do whatever they want with it, right?
Yeah. Got them improved.
Well, and actually my conversation with Yogi was he normally takes down houses like this and starts from scratch. So if, his, sounds like his idea might be the same. He hasn't seen it, but
And given a choice of having a green space there open versus a new house, not knowing what it would be, although I'm sure if that guy is what he says he is, it'd be great. I'd rather have the green space, just personally. But I think it allows what we want to do with the property going forward. It gives us a lot more flexibility with the yellow house or anything else than it would that guy putting up a brand new house.
Any other questions?
I just want to make a comment. I guess based on the photographs and stuff I've seen, it is in bad shape and does need a lot of fixing and repair. Ms. Clemens' estimate could be a little high. But I know looking at what needs to be done and in my field, it's going to take a lot to bring that to a state where somebody could live in it or it was even presentable. I hate the idea of tearing down any structure in the historic district, especially one that's contributing and that has the age that it has on it. It'd be nice to keep those there. But I do understand the economic hardship that you are presenting on that.
Not to interrupt, there's one thing, I saw pictures flash up, I didn't see all of them. The one thing Joe Long, the previous owner, told me, he wanted me to know it before I signed the paperwork. Apparently there was a fire at some point in the house, and there's a couple pictures that were submitted that show what he sent me. And I wasn't climbing a ladder and climbing around where he did in the house. I didn't know what was up there, the position it was in. But they didn't take out the burnt timbers. They just put a new ceiling under it. I don't know if that's it. That wouldn't be it. So you've got part of the structure of the roof has got burnt timbers in it. So he told me that, and I was just kind of like, well, for what I think we're going to do with it, that doesn't bother me. But that's just another data point for you guys to have about the condition of it. There's no central heating or air. It's window units that don't work. Gas and propane in the, it's a money pit.
Do I hear a motion?
Are we moving to approve the COA? Is that what we're,
Yeah, move to approve it.
so move?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now, it's my understanding, we've said, to make it green space, and I think that's been here, but just so that you are aware that any other construction, be it playground equipment, whatever, will require coming back here to get approval for doing that. I think, I'm glad you shared what you had planned on doing
Sure.
it, rather than making it a parking lot or something that
No.
we would. Okay, all right.
We got room for that on the other side of the street.
All right, thanks.
I will issue a signed COA for that you can hold on to, and you can take it to the building department when the time comes that you need a permit for the demolition.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, COA number 2, we actually have 3 COAs for Mr. Duper. This is the first of them. This is for the front steps. I think the commission remembers Mr. Duper. We have been working with him on this property since he purchased it in spring of 2021. It's a Queen Anne Victorian and is in a contributing building to the Albany district. The action requested, actually, before we do that, I should go back. Staff handled this COA, so commission didn't see it, but it was listed on last month's report. There was a low retaining wall against his property and the alley, because the alley, goes right into his property. And so he's replaced that in the last month or so, and it looks really good. I don't have a great photo of it, but he's got it in there to keep the alley where the alley belongs, so all the gravel doesn't end up in his yard, because it was mostly pulverized. There were pieces of it left, but there wasn't a whole lot of it left. So on this one, he would like to replace his front porch steps. They're actually really badly cracked, almost in half, because when the concrete sidewalk was removed, the support under the stairs, it split the stairs sort of in half. So he would like new brick front steps to replace the concrete ones. The commission approved a new brick sidewalk to replace the damaged concrete sidewalk in a prior COA. That work has not occurred yet. Decatur's design review standards, porches, number 3, stairs 10, existing historic porch stairs and railings should be retained and repaired as needed. Where porch stairs or railings are later additions or are missing altogether, new elements would be based on documentation of historic conditions. Typically, wood stairs are appropriate for porches of wood-framed residences, and brick stairs are appropriate for the porches of brick residents. Where new brick stairs are proposed, they should match the color and texture of adjacent foundation. Modern precast concrete stairs are not appropriate on primary elevations. The extant concrete stairs are not original to the house. The house likely had wood steps originally. The commission has allowed replacement brick stairs in the past, particularly if the foundation that is showing is brick. And this foundation is brick, it's painted. The applicant has requested to use a brick that matches the brick that he's going to use for the sidewalk in terms of the color, making the architectural details flow as you enter the house. Now, the actual picture that he sent showed a rounded brick, and I did discuss this with him because he was unaware when he sent this in that the rounded brick is inappropriate for this age of home, and he has agreed to absolutely make that a traditional standard straight brick for the approval of the COA. And so that's just, when the commission gets ready to make a motion, just make sure that is included in there, and we will get that language in there. And that is all that I have on this one, so it is up to the commission if they have
Any
questions.
questions?
No.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
I got one question.
Oh, go.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, we've got a question.
I guess since the foundation is painted and the bricks are going in, I think the concrete's painted right now, would it be more appropriate to have those steps painted than to match the brick used for the site?
So the commission, the hard line historically with the commission and with the federal standards and with other commissions is brick is never painted because it's not good for the brick. So if we're starting off with unpainted brick, it would stay unpainted, would be the federal guidelines would say that. We don't have that specific nuance in our code, but our standards do address do not paint unpainted masonry. Yeah.
That's why I was asking.
Yeah.
I guess one other question, follow-up on that. Would the bricks take like sort of basically the same footprint as the concrete steps? They're not.
Yes.
Nothing's going out or, okay.
John, did you have a motion?
So I'd make a motion.
Second.
No?
And this is for it to be changed for the bricks to be squared off bricks,
Yeah,
not
not the
not
Right,
rounded.
Yes,
Okay.
make a motion that they be as amended with the square bricks.
Okay.
Okay,
So we have a
motion and a second.
motion by John, second by Doty. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Next, COA number 3, 421 6th Avenue Southeast with exterior conduit. Lovely conduit. So this is, the house currently does not have hot water, and Mr. Duper needs to connect a hot water heater on the second floor with his bathroom to power in the basement. But he, at this point, has been unable to find an appropriate chase to put electrical down just because the way the walls are and where they're moving things out. So he would like to, the most feasible and safest solution is to run a 1-inch conduit on the outside rear wall of the house. Design review standards number 15, utilities and accessory structures, HVAC units, exterior conduits and ductwork should typically be placed away from principal elevations. So for staff findings, it's not unusual to have exterior conduit on the rear of historic buildings. As a matter of fact, you can only date how old the building is by how much exterior conduit it has on it. HPC doesn't have specific standards for regular gauge electrical wire, but the standards for utilities seems pretty sufficient for this request. And if the building department code allows it, which Mr. Duper and I have been in discussion about that, then the conduit will be located on the rear of the house and not visible from any of the primary vantages.
Any questions, comments? Your motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next, exterior retaining wall. Mr. Duper requested repairing the retaining walls in a way that was found not keeping with the historic design a few months ago. So the commission asked him to meet with a stonemason to determine the correct methodology. And so this is an older photo of the house, but you'll see the stone retaining walls on two sides. The walls differ. The retaining wall that faces 6th Avenue is a different construction method and design than what faces Sherman. It's probably because 6th Avenue was widened at one point, and either there was no retaining wall there originally or the retaining wall had to be pushed back when the street was widened. This is one of the oldest retaining walls in the district. We don't have very many actually historic retaining walls, and this is the only stone one I'm aware of. There might be others. I've been out looking, but this is a pretty sort of special wall with its visibility, so it's kind of neat. So the action requested on this, and here are some pictures that show you, it's very low, but it's, over time, as things have moved, it's shifted.
Is a possible example of a contemporary is the one around the courthouse, the back, the Decatur Park?
And Fraser Park too.
Yeah, but those are contemporary. So this is a much older.
Well,
I
no,
don't
the ones I'm
know.
talking about are from 1890.
Oh, you're talking about, so not
Yeah,
the
where
building,
Justice
but
is,
the, okay.
yeah.
Do you know, are they,
Where the
are they,
courthouse used to be.
so the former, so are they rubble like this, or are they a cut stone that's, do you know?
They're kind of a little more finished than this, but,
Okay.
it's like a rough stone.
Okay. So now, okay, now I'm gonna go look at
Yeah.
those, because
It's
I'm
not
very
as-
curious.
it's not as
about
rough as
retaining
that.
walls.
Yeah,
All right,
it's
that's awesome.
finished masonry, but it's.
Okay.
And Fraser Park has one, I think that was original to the house that was there before. It's park.
So the tops of the stone retaining wall have cracked and shifted, and Mr. Duper proposes straightening them, presumably by moving their location slightly because they're sort of moved around, and then pouring a 2-inch thick layer of concrete on top of the walls with expansion joints every 4 feet. Decatur's design review standards. Historic retaining walls are rare within the district. The standards do not have anything that specifically addresses them. In cases where the standards don't provide specific guidance, the Commission has historically referred back to the Secretary of the Interior's standard. Standard number 2 states the historic character of a property shall be retained and preserved. The removal of historic materials or alterations of features and spaces that characterize a property shall be avoided. Standard 5 states distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques or examples of craftsmanship that characterize a property shall be preserved. Standard number 6 states deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than replaced. When the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature shall match the old in design, color, shape, and other visual qualities, where possible, materials. So the property boundary, has this historic stone wall, and the proposed work, in terms of the information we have, doesn't appear to be meeting the standards, but Mr. Duper might have more information on the existing tops of those and how they would fit in.
Is that concrete there over on the side?
What's the top or
Is
on
that
the
a
side?
concrete block? Is that what that is?
I think.
You had a stonemason come out, didn't you, to look at that? What was his report?
Well, he said tear the whole thing down. I said, there's no way that's going to happen. So after I told him about my idea, he was like, well, I was like, what do you think we could do? And he was like, well, he'd probably just, like exactly what I said, put a 2-inch thing on top of it or whatever and just put the expansion joints in. Because it really, I think that is concrete. And so if we did do that, it wouldn't look different as far as the stones and stuff. It would just be, the top would just be more organized and uniform, other than, the disgrace it is now.
You're talking about only putting 2 inches back
Very-
next to
very
that,
thin.
which is
Yeah.
Pretty
So
thick.
this thing,
pretty thick.
just raising it 2 inches. The reason for that is because all of it's cracked and stuff. Did you have any other pictures or not? I may have not.
So, yeah, that's a better picture, that one just there. You can see.
Go back.
Want me to go?
Yeah,
Right
there's
there.
something of a capstone there.
Yeah.
And were you talking about, because it looks like, it's at different levels.
Yeah,
It's gonna,
It would just be flat, yeah.
yeah.
Flat and straight, like the retaining wall.
But at one point in time, that was flat.
Yeah, at
You
some
know.
point in time, I'm sure that was flat and straight and all that other good stuff. I guess just over time, everything started, it's a 100-year-old house or whatever, so.
Right.
Well, and see, that's, were you talking about on top of the flat stones, another 2 inches? So then where it was lower, it would be more than 2 inches of concrete, is that right? Am I making sense?
Yeah, you are.
So like,
It's-
yeah, right, so like right there, if you don't mind, I'll just stand up. Like, are you talking about like over this, another 2 inches, and then here would be,
Well, this has since been put back up. I don't know when this picture, I'm sorry, I don't know when but yeah, that's since been put back up, and just it's not level, like there's cracks in between a bunch of them and stuff. Yeah, it's all wavy like this. So yes, it would be
Okay.
it would just to flatten everything out. It would be that.
Are you gonna put and I'd like to know, Carolyn, do you know those topper things, are they stone or just pieces of concrete?
When I saw them, I assumed they were stone, but when Mr. Duper said he was going to meet with a mason, that was one of the reasons, was to determine the materials and
Did he tell you?
what the options were.
I didn't necessarily ask him, is this stone or concrete? I'm not a geologist, but I don't know. If I'm being honest, I have no idea.
I would think we'd want to know, because you've got the top, whatever they are, concrete or stone, across, you're missing parts of it. That to straighten, I understand straightening up and doing that, but to leave that, whatever that material is, in those lengths that it is, I think is what we need to look at.
Do you have a view of the 6th Avenue side too?
Let's see, I'm not sure if this is 6 or, this might be 6th Avenue here.
So it's got the same thing.
I mean, it has the rough edges. When you look at the edges on it, they're textured the way that stone is when it's cut out, which is why I had assumed it was stone, but I'm not a materials person. When you met with the mason, was his suggestion essentially to take the rocks down and rebuild the wall with the rocks, like that you needed to pull it down and then just rebuild it at that point?
I don't know if he said with the rocks. What he really wanted to do is he said, leave all this, put a brick thing right there and just build it up, so just cover all that. But I said, there's no way that's going to happen. So, and then I was like, well, what do you think about, he was like, by the time you tore it all down and tried to put it back, it just wouldn't, he was like, that's ridiculous. That doesn't even really make sense, or it would just be way too much time, way too much money, way too much. Yeah, he was like, that wouldn't make any sense. He was like, if you're just going to leave it there, you need to just repair the tops of it rather than going in and try to take everything out to put it all back in and stuff.
I think I would like to know what that cap piece is.
What it is.
If
Well,
it's
I'm
stone
trying
and
to-
it's
oh,
like
is that what we
individual
Yeah,
capstone
that's the problem.
I don't really want to
that
go
shows
back
it.
with poured in place concrete if it's individual capstones. I think we got to know a little bit more
Can you tell
about that.
from this?
I think you can repair it without taking it down. You don't need to take it
Right,
down.
I agree. I think so too.
There are a lot of people that can do that,
I guess it depends on how much of that is missing.
Yes.
but they can
Or if
add-
a section can be replaced
Yeah.
with a like material, if it's broken into a bunch of pieces, can it be?
I see that. It's another photograph he's got, where you can kind of see what it is.
Can we table this and
Yeah, that looks like stone.
let
It kinda
Mr.
looks like-
Duper find out what that,
Yeah.
do you have access to your guy still?
Yeah, I could figure it out.
Can he come back and, tell you whether it's,
Stone or concrete.
I think,
Yeah.
I can tell you what my preference would be, and it would be like that, I think that stone at the top, that capstone, that's gotta be, originally how it was finished all the way around.
Mhm.
If that could be more or less, restored in that sense, I think that would be fine. It's just, but are you talking about removing all of that? and then doing a
Restoring.
two-inch?
I want to restore the capstones.
Okay.
That's what I'm arguing though, and what I'm saying, and which I know to be true, is that you cannot just, they're so badly cracked and they're so badly just dismantled. You can't just say, oh, just throw some caulk on it or throw some mortar on it and it's going to look fine.
Well, yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is, okay, if somehow you had all the original capstones on there, you're saying it would still be uneven and you'd still need to do something? Does that make sense?
Well, no, I have. If you drive past my house right now,
Yeah.
all the original capstones are there. The
Okay.
problem is they're all cracked and dismantled and not 100% straight. So it's like, okay, how do you make this look okay and decent? Right now it looks decent, I guess.
Yeah.
For all I care, I'll just leave it like that. It doesn't look terrible, but it doesn't look good. So that was my idea, to make it look good. But yeah.
Jim All had mentioned, the city, sometime when they take up some of those granite curves, there may be some of those somewhere, so Caroline and I will check and see if, when they take those up. And it's possible that, I don't know, but it sort of looks like that. It'd be very similar to that.
Yeah, that's
So is
what
that-
it reminded me of.
Is that
Exactly.
called Carl?
I think they're
Courtney?
thicker than
Yeah.
that, though. Aren't they thicker?
Well, they might be able to be cut down if need be. I don't know.
So, don't know that that's available, but
We
I
can
think
check.
if you're gonna table it, that may be something that we will check. and see if
Okay,
we can, some that weren't cracked.
Austin, so I'll check with engineering to see if they have any of the historic stone
Okay.
curbs and where they might be. I know you were asking on Nextdoor for Stonemason recommendations, so have people given you any yet?
On Stonemason recommendation? Oh, no,
No, you don't have any yet?
No.
Okay.
that's okay. I'll figure it
You're
out.
good? Okay. All right.
Do I have a
Let me
motion?
say one thing. There's a business called Eagle Eye Masonry, and the Alabama Historical Commission told us about it at the Rose Garden. And it's just this man, and he knows all about stone. But in Decatur, you could take a small piece of that stone to Frankie Sparks at Sparks Stone, and they could tell you about the stone. Or you can Google that Eagle Eye Masonry. And he does cemeteries. He rebuilt in the Rose Garden. One of the columns had been knocked down, and he rebuilt it so that it looks just like the original. And we redid all the tops that were knocked off, that were gone. So it's certainly doable and not that expensive.
Well, I hate to say, I didn't actually go to I drove by, but I didn't get up to closely inspect what it was, but I'll do that now.
Yeah, go check it out.
See what.
Well, I did, and I couldn't tell.
Good job. 'Cause I mean, if it is concrete, I guess in principle, what you're talking about is not, historically inaccurate. But if it's something else, I think, the least done to it, the better, probably.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to table? Motion?
Motion.
Second, did he?
Okay, who made the motion?
I did.
John? Okay.
Rebecca. All in favor?
All in favor?
Any opposed?
Mr. Duper, I have one more thing. Charlie Huff, who lived in that house all his life, is still here in Decatur, and he could help you in any of these details. And if you have questions, I know that he'd be willing to.
Okay. Charlie Cuff?
Charlie Huff, yes, I can't remember who he works for now, but he lives in Point Mallard.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was a great source.
Okay, last item with Mr. Duper is the backyard shed. This is actually a side picture. This is an older one, but it was the best one I had that was able to sort of show you where the wall ends. So the applicant would like to install a temporary backyard shed accessed from Sherman Street and pushed up against the rear of the house. So this is the site. This is where it would fit. This is how high it would be when it was in place. Design review standards number 14, outbuildings and auxiliary buildings. 3, new construction. New outbuildings should be simple in design to complement and blend with the main residence. Outbuildings constructed within street vantages shall generally meet the guidelines for new constructions or additions. Now this is a prior, Mr. Duper had sort of had some incomplete COAs before where he was discussing various locations for a shed. This was a prior one. As the commission probably remembers, the garage is no longer there, so that yellow small rectangle up there it's been gone for a very long time. But that sort of shows you the distance on his backyard versus sort of his side yard on the north end. This is the first complete application we have for a shed for Mr. Duper now. The shed design has changed several times. The staff has worked with Mr. Duper to find a simple design. All previous discussions of the shed had it located in the rear yard just off the alley. The location moved to behind the house, accessible and visible from Sherman, and is pushed sort of right up against the house. The commission doesn't have standards for temporary structures, nor could staff find any prior rulings addressing temporary construction. In the commission, the commission has simply directed applicants to temporary storage like pod units. If this is going to be placed on the rear yard or the side yard, obviously Mr. Duper is not at a point where he can be landscaping right now because he is still working on other things with site. But the commission has always just had that they be screened, and so it might be something where the commission addresses a longer-term landscaping plan within a year after the shed goes in, if that's something the commission is looking for. This is the design of it, so it's very simple. Side, nothing that's going to draw your attention to it. That is all for staff findings.
Well, can we go back to the location on the, right there? Is it gonna block your window? The,
Well, it appears it might, but if that's, go back one more, if you don't mind. That's 18 feet. I'm almost wondering that I could push it back far enough to make it not block the.
I'm wondering if you wanna go back to your plan.
I have
Can we-
a question now that I'm looking at the picture to make sure I'm seeing it correctly. Let's see, can you see my mouse when it moves at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't.
This right here, that's their outbuilding or garage or whatever, correct?
Yeah.
So that goes beyond the driveway.
Yeah, it's like it's a foot.
So does that mean that their property line is about right
It's
here?
about, yeah, it's 1 foot, yeah.
Given the constraints that he's got in his backyard, which is non-existent virtually, could we approve something else by the alley if eventually we put some shrubs in front of it or something? Could we approve that?
Yeah, I mean, there have been yards before that because of the way the yards are laid out, the commission has approved sheds with the caveat that, you know, there needs to be some landscaping. They site them as best they can, and obviously he doesn't really have a rear yard, so, and then it could be sited on that back corner and then address landscaping with a master plan later, because obviously he's got to bring a tree back in, we already know that, but he can't do that now, so he'll be doing future work.
No, because I'm saying if you had a shed that close to the back of your house, you're not gonna be able to work on the back of your house. When time comes to paint it, you're gonna have to move that shed.
Seems like a safety issue to me too.
Is
It's like
it-
a fall into your second floor.
What's your reason, why do you wanna put it right next to the house?
Because I want to have a backyard.
Okay, so you just wanna have room back there, okay.
I mean, I'm not necessarily totally opposed to putting it in the backyard. I wouldn't want to put it there now, but to me, yeah, because to me that's kind of dead space. I won't ever really do anything back there. I won't. Right now I have my lawnmower in my house, my concrete mixer, all the tools. I'd like to put it outside somewhere so that I can do work in the house and get that ready. To me, that makes the most sense for now. And like I said, Caroline's right when she says it's temporary. I don't necessarily plan on leaving that there forever, but at least while I'm, you know, remodeling and stuff, then yes.
Would you be averse to it being out by the alley?
Yeah, I mean, that's the
I
usual
wouldn't be
spot.
thrilled, but you know. Yeah, well, yeah. Can you go back to the master, the one with everything in it, the fire mat from so long ago? There. What my grand plan would be to have that fence that kind of ran back, and then fence all that in to have a backyard, to have somewhere to like play, and then like that would be the back porch again. I'm planning on that's coming back at some point. And so back porch, yard to play, that's kind of my like, you know, area. Because everything else, I mean, 6th Avenue and stuff, you don't really want to be out there. That to me is the only spot that I can make that's kind of private, mine or whatever. So that's kind of why I want to leave that open. But, you know, if push comes to shove, I don't necessarily mind putting it back there.
6th Avenue now is encroached on that, right? That's a lot. I mean, that property line is,
It's not too far off.
It's not too far. It's probably a little bit closer, but it's not. I mean, it's not terrible. But yeah.
So if you said that the shed is temporary though, then you would have it removed anyway by the time you got the yard landscaped and put in your back fence and everything, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, who knows where I'll end up putting the shed permanently. I mean, that could end up happening again. I might end up trying to build that thing again. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. For now, what I would want is a backyard, a fence around that backyard, and for the shed to be somewhere not over there, so that I can play football and baseball with, whoever.
I'm not sure what the zoning ordinance has to say, but I know there's probably a setback on the property. And I know the closer you get, even if it's a detached structure, if you get it close to the house, it's considered part of the house.
Really?
So I think if you're gonna put it there, we need a site plan showing where the setbacks are to see that it can be there. The one thing, if you notice on those plans, those outbuildings are a good distance away from the house, so it can be set at the property line. Closer you get to the house, it's considered part of the house. So that would be my one question about the feasibility of putting it there, if you've investigated that.
Building code required, I mean, if it's that close, fire separation.
It's not fire separation, it's just the ordinance, it's just a setback. A lot of times you can have a detached garage or a building that's closer to the property line as long as it's a certain distance away from the house.
From the house?
5 feet. 5 foot setback from the property line. From the house, I don't know.
Is there the same?
There's a distance
rule?
away from the house, I'd have to go back to the ordinance and look, but it may be like, if the structure is within 3 feet of the house, then it's considered part of the house.
Okay.
And you have to abide by the setback. If it's further away, then you can get closer to the property line.
If it's a portable shed, is it still
I
considered?
don't know what the city ordinance would say about a temporary shed that,
If it's portable, I mean,
yeah, like,
I'd like to
if
know
someone's
the
gonna be
rules.
there for a certain amount of time, could you do it?
I've never seen a shed be removed, that's the problem. They
Yeah.
usually stay forever.
Yeah. The shed is 12 feet by 10 feet. So if I put the 10-foot side on that 13-foot side, I guess it all depends on how far that setback has to be from the house. Then,
I think we need to know what that setback is before we approve something.
Well, or could we just approve it?
I think we could approve it at the
We
alley.
could approve that.
But he doesn't want to do that.
If he's gonna put
I
it
mean,
up.
we can prove all we want, but if he
That's
doesn't want to do
another,
it,
yeah, that's another issue if,
it's not going to get done.
if that's a legal issue with the setback and
We have to table this one
And
until we find
at the
out.
narrowest, it's 10 feet, and if he's got 13 feet there, there's not enough space. I mean, if there's a 5-foot setback required from the property line,
Well, but the
We don't
house
Unless
itself,
it's,
that's-
unless it's a
that little
portable
jut out.
thing, and they might
probably
let
not-
them do
I think
that,
the
I'm
jut
not
out's
sure.
probably on
Yeah.
the setback.
Because they did next door to
Yeah.
me. I mean, that backyard.
is that like new code? Why is this? Because I mean, that shed that my neighbors have right here, like that's right against the property line.
Because that was built in the 18 and early 1900s.
It's more than 5 feet away from the
Yeah.
house.
Well, it's an original
Yeah,
structure.
but they didn't have the same codes when they built your house and our houses that they do now. So like, I have a garage that's literally right on the property line. There is no way that that would ever get built today. I can't even access one side of my garage if I need to paint it. It would have to have a 5-foot setback if I tried to build it now. So that's just contemporary building code versus what they had then.
And it's, I suppose it's difficult for us to make any kind of ruling on the temporary nature of it or whatever. Because that's another issue. I mean, if you could put some kind of
Well, and the commission has approved structures like this before that were not temporary. So then the real issue is, you know, placement and screening. And if it's something where the commission feels like, okay, we can approve it on the north side, as far up as he can get it, and then he and I can work through the details with the building department, because the building department will ultimately control that setback. It doesn't have to come back to the commission for that one.
Right.
And I can't imagine, Alan, it's probably not gonna be more than 5 feet off the property line, and so you're most. And so that's something that we can work with him on to sort of get it sited so he can get something on the property to hold his tools. And then when he gets ready to do his yard, he might decide he wants something somewhere else, or he wants to build the mother of all garages back again to, you know, have an indoor ping pong space, and then we can get to that when he's at that stage.
Okay, so what sort of motion do we need for that?
This one would be amended. It allows the structure if the commission is fine with the building. And just that it goes in that northwest corner as close as it can based on what the building department would allow. And then he and I can work through that with the building department and get that hammered out. So that would be an amended COA.
So moved. Based on what she said.
Now I have to write it all down.
So I have a motion based on what she said.
Make a motion on what you said.
Who's seconding it?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I will reach out to the building department tomorrow morning. I will get answers for you, and then I will get back in touch with you, and we'll figure out where to go next.
Thank you all.
627 Johnston Street Southeast, Mr. and Ms. Haynes. This is the house. This circa 1908 house is a vernacular folk structure that is a contributing building within the Albany district. The action request of the applicant has a vintage concrete ribbon driveway that's failing, so he would like to replace it with a larger ribbon driveway of brick instead of concrete. So this application is asking for a material change and dimension change. Current dimensions of the ribbon driveway are 24-inch concrete ribbon pavers separated by a 32-inch wide grassy strip. Applicant proposes changing these proportions to 42-inch wide ribbons separated by a narrow 14-inch grassy strip, or landscaped planting strip, with brick. The design review standards, commission standards for driveways are limited because they are not often proposed or need repair when the standards were last revised. In the cases where the standards don't provide specific guidance, the commission has historically referred back to the Secretary of the Interior standards and or prior rulings. Secretary of the Interior standards number 6 states deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than replaced, where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature. The new feature will match the old in design, color, texture, visual qualities. Staff findings, and I went through and reviewed other driveway requests, has historically ruled that existing and new driveways be of the same exposed aggregate used on the historic sidewalks. Staff could find no evidence of brick being reproved in prior driveways that were ruled on. It doesn't mean that there's none in the district. I just couldn't find any evidence that any were approved. Current ribbon driveway size is 32-inch grassy strip, 24-inch concrete strip. And of course, vehicles now are a little bit bigger than they were when these were put in, so trying to line them up on this is a bit challenging. So the concrete ribbon width has varied between 2 and 3 feet when I looked at contemporary drawings on what you need to put in a ribbon driveway to give your wheels the space. Applicants proposed a 14-inch grassy strip, which is smaller than the standard, and has proposed significantly wider paved areas, which are 42-inch on each side. Staff suggests a ruling on materials and width that's in keeping with commission and historic precedents. And I can show you it's very badly. I mean, it's at the end of its life cycle. I mean, it's missing major pieces. And so this was his drawing on what's existing. And I will say thank you for these drawings. It's really nice to have these. I was like, I'm going to save this in my file of what to show people when they submit, because it made sense and it was clear. This is what he would like to propose. And he was looking for brick to match this.
Is that the sidewalk currently?
That's correct. All right, so I brought a packet with us, a little bit more information and details, and I'm really sure the format here this evening, so I hope this will explain a little bit more. And good evening, everyone.
I gotta pass it on.
You had a survey done. It looks like if it gets wider, it's really close to your neighbors.
It is close, but it does step off, it's not on the property line.
Okay.
It's within the fence line.
There's a couple more. So I would give a disclaimer about not being an architect, but I believe my renderings probably make that quite apparent. So I'll refrain from that. So thank y'all for having us this evening. I'm Sam Haynes and my wife Marcia. We do reside at 627 Johnston Street in the Albany Historic District and have done so for about a little over 25 years now. I believe this is our third or fourth time coming before the board to get approval for a beautification renovation project. In the packet, you obviously have our application for a certificate of appropriateness, the drawings that we did with the existing drive and the proposed drive, and then there's several photos in there of existing properties within Albany and Old Decatur. My wife gave me some speaking points so I wouldn't stray too far here and just start rambling. So we labeled our, our proposal here, replacement beautification, because that's exactly what it is. It's beautification on our existing property that kind of steps us out from the properties on either side of us. One is a very large purple house. I'm sure everyone's seen that one. And then there's a 3-car garage behind the one to our west that's never been completed. It was approved and built, but it stands there unfinished. And so
We're trying to see that a little.
yes, again, beautification. It's all about the beautification project. For us, the increase in the value of our home and the beautification continued for Albany. We did take a look at some research and pulled up the historical guidelines from this old house, and correct, aggregate was predominantly used between 1900 and 1930. Our house was built in 1914. It was due to cost savings. So, but brick was allowed, as was asphalt and aggregate as well. So we believe we still do fall into the period materials. Let's see, we also have y'all's online guidelines here. I believe they're still relevant or still current. So with that being said, if you'd like to, you're all stepping through the proposal there, there's a much newer picture of our house, recent than the original one that was shown, and with the existing brick sidewalk, and we'd like to, we're proposing that we match that same brick for the ribbon driveway rather than doing a solid concrete replacement or identical concrete aggregate ribbons. Like I said, cars are a lot bigger than what they were back in the early 1900s, so that does, it is somewhat of a challenge. There are several pictures in here of similar brick driveways throughout the historic districts, both Albany and Old Decatur, to include solid and ribbon, to include the trolley tracks over on Church Street with the brick linings there. If you get out and walk and wander. Let's see. So we also noticed while we were out walking about taking pictures is there's not a real consistency with driveway material. There's everything from dirt to gravel to stone to concrete, both ribbon and solid. There's ribbon with brick, ribbon with concrete and brick, a large mix out there. So in closing with you guys, following up with questions, we have to remove our existing ribbon driveway due to its deteriorated state. And we would like to replace it with the brick ribbon, sticking with the ribbon. We'll do like a mondo grass or something like that down the center between the two ribbons, with our landscaping. And I believe that's about it, pending your questions.
Sam, how much
much space is there gonna be between your new ribbon and your next door neighbor? And are you gonna do Mondo, are you planning to do Mondo grass? I mean, what is?
So we are probably going to, we got to resod our backyard. We will put sod along the boundary line there, between, and I was told I probably need to have a measurement of this. I'm gonna say maybe a foot or a little less, somewhere, I'd say between a half a foot and a foot.
Yeah, we just dealt with a property in Old Decatur that had just like narrow.
Yeah.
Would you pour concrete first and put the brick on top?
Absolutely, Mr. Stone. We'll put a solid foundation down for it. I think probably around 4 to 6 inches with mesh enclosure within the concrete to prevent any kind of major settling or cracking. We'll also we'll go back and seal it several times, and then that'll probably be a annual or biannual project for sealing the brick, also to prevent any major seepage of water or freezing.
Well,
Well, so you can refer to those pictures and see what happened to our existing aggregate, and you know, it's just, it's so, and it's an investment, and we want to make it look good and make it look right and be there and last for a long, long time. Yes, sir.
Caroline, you said that the commission has never approved that you could find a driveway. So the brick that he's showing here,
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I went through, so like when I look at the ones on here that I recognize, the first image, that's commercial, that's Thomas Terrace. The second one, that's Ferry, that's partial brick. I recognize that house, so it's partial aggregate, partial brick. I don't know at what point that brick was put in. The next house, I think, is Lafayette.
The top
sure.
right,
Yeah, is
I
that
believe
Lafayette?
that is Kane, maybe?
Is that Kane?
I believe.
Okay.
to be
Cherry, yes, ma'am,
Okay,
yes, ma'am.
Cherry,
And then
okay.
the bottom one's on Johnston.
That's a
right
couple doors down from
Now,
us.
that one I did recognize, because that one is,
Kinsel's.
yes, thank you. I was like, I know the person who lives there, because I've
So
talked to him
these two
several
are the
times.
same drive, they're just two.
Yes, and he's not that far from
That's
that, right?
correct,
Like,
yeah.
he's just like across and down one from
Yeah.
now, right? So that's helpful in terms of like proximity to ones that are neighboring. I don't know the history on his, and that's a detail. The next one is Kinsel's too, right? The top of the
That's
next
correct,
page.
yes, ma'am.
The one below that's on Grant.
Yes, ma'am.
The one on the top of the next page, where is that?
That is Renee Mosher's house. It's the old Gilligan house.
Where?
Over
Old
on,
Gilligan House.
what's that, Jackson Street or?
Sure, it's on Sherman.
Sherman,
Okay, so
Sherman,
that's,
yes, ma'am.
okay, so
Kind of
that
rough.
house is like a is that like a 1960s? Yeah, the trolley tracks are different because they're trolley tracks, so that's transportation, yeah.
We just thought that was a cool picture.
Yeah, it is. And then I know, when we get to the stone one, that's a non-compliant one that the commission's aware of. And the one after that with cement, I'm not sure. That one might be,
No, that's
that one?
off Lafayette,
that's Lafayette.
yes.
And the asphalt one, is that the two?
That's
brick-
on
is that
Oak,
behind
I believe they're
Archives?
apartments, so.
Yeah, so
back
that's
in there.
commercial, so that's
Okay.
behind Archives between Walnut and, I forget the cross street, but that's right where they're doing the townhouses, right? That's like right tucked in by there. Okay.
It's just off, it's on Oak, just off of Lafayette.
Yes.
And then the next one's on Oak.
And that one, the last one is new, because that's the garage off of Oak, but I don't know, when I say new, I don't have it in my files, so I don't know if it predates district, if it was early district. It doesn't? Okay.
But the driveway, no, it's been done relatively recently.
So that one is not showing in my files, so.
You know, I wonder if that is, because when we went online to look at the guidelines, right, and there wasn't anything that specifically called out driveways. So I have to wonder if people know to come and ask about driveways.
it wasn't covered in the guidelines, so I just wonder if people asked.
Driveways are mentioned, and we do have a fair number of applications for driveways. We've had 3 in the last year or less. Because we had Cheryl Marsh, we had the one next to her, we had Boyette's. Then we had the one over on, we had another one in Old Decatur. So we've had 4 at least in the last 6 to 7 months. But I do know with some of the earlier stuff, when the commission was running without staff, the records are less complete and people didn't have a contact as well for things. And so that sort of helped. But I think, you know, if the thing that helps sort of when I look at this is if we've got one catty corner that they're practically, it's at that point you're not breaking the rhythm.
Right.
Because we have, and it's a ribbon brick, it's not even a brick like contemporary, it's like a ribbon brick driveway that's essentially catty corner from them.
Yeah, so that gives us,
And it looks like it's larger dimensions as well.
It is. I believe Scott Scholl did those, or he's the one that completely redid that house, and I believe he did the driveway as well.
Any more?
Sorry, do we need to talk about the dimensions then? We've covered the
Yeah.
brick.
What I'm thinking is, they're not wide enough for cars today. And where they, if we say you gotta go back exactly there, so I don't really have an issue with that. And maybe we want enough grass in the middle, so, you know, so you know it's ribbon, it's not just you got this little teeny sliver.
Right.
That's right.
Maybe 14, a little bit wider than 14 inches or something.
We can do that,
Um,
to satisfy the board. I mean,
I'm just thinking.
we came up with that figure because we looked at what the width of our sidewalk was and was gonna stick with the same dimensions. Plus, it was easier to calculate the number of bricks.
Yeah.
Based on what was in that and the length, so.
What, do you know what the width of that one is? Isn't that the one that's next?
I do not.
It's,
I would say it's 48 inches, but that'd just be lying too, so I won't do that.
okay.
I would get, let's see how many bricks, I don't know if I can count the number of bricks in it.
No, I'm talking about the middle. And I
can we
Looks
move
like 5
to
bricks across.
approve and let you, Caroline, work with them on the dimensions of it based on the one that's catty corner from them?
Yeah, we can figure something out. So it's just, so approving the material, approving the location, and then the final green strip will be based on some further field evaluation. And I can go meet with them and figure that out.
And they may want to look at the, not having a brick that's cut. So I think you're at 3 foot 6 inches now, which means you probably have to cut a brick.
Well, we will, I'll cut it in half,
And, well, the half,
but we'll have to do that regardless because they'll be staggered.
right, so if you do a 3'4", then you wouldn't have a portion of a brick. That's the true half dimension. So if you took 2 inches off of it, made it 40 inches, then you're at a brick, or if you go another 8. So if you keep keeping that, it may make it a little bit easier for construction.
Easier for you.
So County
Cost
Scott,
effective.
good point, yeah, save a couple of bricks, go take it down from 5,000 bricks to 4,000 bricks or something. So it looks like they're the same dimension as the Shoals driveway there, I believe they're 5 across, and ours is 5 across. So, if that helps at all.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. I thought I was gonna have to tap dance a little bit more and juggle something.
Thank you.
Are you entertained?
Yes, thank you.
We've been before, and so,
Yes.
we did stained glass one year, and we actually colored pencils with the glass and what it was going on.
I'll be in touch with you starting next week, and we'll
Thank you. Thank y'all very much. Y'all have a good night. Good seeing you. Thanks.
So our last set of COAs tonight is 217 Church Street Northeast, Dickey and Sharp. On these COAs, Rebecca is also going to recuse herself for conflict of interest. So the first one of these is for a fence, and I think I saw Chris the Deacon. There you are. I was like, I thought I saw him come in. And this is back in his backyard. The house is a contributing folk Victorian in the old Decatur district, and staff received calls of significant front porch work occurring at this address in March of 2021. Staff arrived on site, and majority of the front porch had been removed. Most of the porch supports were replaced with a different design, and the front porch pieces were in a trailer for being removed and being hauled away. A stop work order was issued on March 16th. Mr. Dickey came to City Hall to discuss the project, but felt that the work was finished and there was nothing he could do. Letters were mailed to the owners and to Mr. Dickey in June, August, and September. A second stop work order was issued on October 11th when calls came in regarding a non-compliant fence in the backyard. Mr. Dickey did not contact the city at any point after the letters were mailed until a court summons was issued January 5th. And then Mr. Dickey has reached out to staff shortly after that to see what he needs to do to bring the project back into compliance. So after talking over his project with him, we've got 3 COAs here. And the first one, got my papers out of order, is the fence. So his block does not have alley access. So there was an alley at one time, it was vacated, so now you have literally like neighbors' garages and garages sort of on top of each other there. He's constructed a 6-foot-tall wooden fence approximately 22 feet long. It's partially supported by a horizontal platform 3 to 4 feet wide, so it almost makes the structure similar to a gazebo. He's looking for a retroactive approval on this. This item is sort of partially fence, partially garden structure. I was sort of trying to look at our appropriate code for it. So for garden structures such as gazebos, retaining walls, trellises, other structures should be located as to not be readily visible from public vantages. And then for fencing, section 12, within the district's cast iron and wooden picket fences are typically found on principal street vantages. Brick, chain link, wooden plank, and other wooden fences are found at secondary vantages. Height, principal vantages no more than 3. Fences on readily visible second advantages no higher than 6. Wood fences, the use of wood picket on principal. Well, this is in the rear. It's marginally, you will see it when walking by, but it's pushed pretty far back. HPC has approved horizontal wood fencing before, most recently on Sherman Street, and their fencing was much closer to the street than this one is. And this is longer than the item that the commission has previously approved. It's significantly further back on the property line and only partially visible.
Anybody have any questions? A motion?
Motion to approve fence.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Just realized I forgot the porch flooring sample. Alan, you want to do me a favor? I want to go to my office and there's a really long sample of porch flooring leaning up against my wall along with a piece of Victorian gingerbreading sitting on the floor beside it. You can't miss them, they're both there. Yeah, and it's a long board, so don't jam up the elevator with it. Totally forgot to bring them down. I knew I'd forgotten something and I couldn't think through what it is. My office, I have samples of windows, copper roofing. It's becoming quite the storage unit.
Oh, he's doing that.
Yeah, it's.
I went in there looking for you earlier.
Yeah, I think it was a supply closet at one time, and I mean literally like my files are in the hallway because I don't have any space.
So we want to go to the porch supports.
Let's go ahead and do the porch flooring because I can walk this one. There's a lot to walk through on this one. So this shows you as he was removing the porch, the original porch, and the porch columns. So you have a pretty good view. And then what you're seeing in here, these sort of blue and gray, these are the scrap materials from the new porch flooring that he's putting down.
Question quickly.
Yes.
To the right, that's a picture of the original.
Well, it's what was there.
What
So,
was there.
yeah, what was there, yes, because a lot of these houses have had,
Okay.
so this
I know
this
we're
is,
not discussing that now, but there's a.
yes, so this is what was removed along with scrap material from the new work that he did. So house is a contributing folk Victorian in the Old Decatur district. This one, he has used a synthetic material on the porch flooring, and so this retroactive COA is to replace the warped front porch boards with this synthetic material called AZEC. So design review standards for porches to retain historic components. Historic porch columns, railings, other details should be retained and repaired as needed. Replace missing or deteriorated components in kind. Where porch columns, railings, and others details are deteriorated or missing, new components should duplicate the historic components in design and workmanship. So Mr. Dickey's wood front porch decking had warped from rain, and he did, the pictures, they didn't transfer well. I think they're in your packet, but they're hard to read, but you can see where they had actually bubbled up on that front porch. When you look at the rest of his street, and this is not uncommon, the majority of those Victorian houses have concrete porches that were put in the early 20th century. So those original wood porches that were built in the 1880s, by the 1920s, either through termites or rot, and people were starting to replace them with concrete. So you will see that in a lot when you walk down the street, particularly on the north-facing ones. So the commission, you might remember, discussed the appropriateness of a synthetic replacements for porch decking before and agreed to allow the use of Arius, which is a synthetic, in 2021. And that's the one that was approved at the National Historic Landmark Site, Oak Alley, because a number of preservation, thank you. All right, here, I'll let you show and tell. Got it. Because a number, yeah, his has the tan side up. That's what he's used. Arius was approved because it had been approved for use on a National Historic Landmark Site, and a number of major preservation commissions in the U.S., like New Orleans, allowed it. AZEC is a different material. It is has a smooth side, and then it has a faux wood grain textured side, and the applicant installed it with that faux wood grain texture side up. So I reached out to see if other commissions felt this material was appropriate and what their experience with it was, because our design review guidelines really don't take into account synthetic materials, and that's something we'll be talking about, how we work through these and how we look at these.
I think I've seen it before.
So I reached out to quite a few of my contemporaries at other municipalities and just said, hey, do you allow it? And if so, what have you dealt with? How does it work? San Antonio, Texas allows it. Cranberry, New Jersey, they have flooding. They approve it for porches. Milwaukee, Wisconsin does not allow it. Iowa City requires wood. They do not allow it. Frederick, Maryland does not allow it for historic structures, but they allow it for new. Saratoga Springs in New York will not allow it. Kalamazoo, Michigan denies it on front porches, but they allow it on rear porches. They don't feel that the product is appropriate for public-facing facades. Ypsilanti, Michigan has approved it, but they require the smooth side has to face up instead of faux textured side, which doesn't look like wood when it's on a porch. Louisville, Kentucky allowed it a few times, but claimed, quote, they've never been impressed with it because it comes off as fake, end quote, so it sounds like they're veering away from it. Richmond, Virginia only allows synthetics on front porch decking if it's too deteriorated to repair or completely missing. Baltimore, Maryland does seem to allow it at times, but not always. So the preservation professionals I talked about with this warned that if any bird happens to go to the bathroom on it that's dark colored, it will permanently acid burn into the synthetic, and that this material gets very hot in the summer. There was discussion about how the non-textured side is very slippery, but then the textured side, the images it doesn't replicate well with the historic buildings. Some suggested real mahogany, which they said was cheaper than this material. Some commissions are actually going towards, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but Jacob, I'm counting on you here, aceliated wood projects, is that correct?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to you, thank you. Like Akoya and thermally treated lumber. So those are things we definitely can discuss in the future and talk to other commissions. So based on discussions with these staff people and the fact that the applicant's house is when you walk by on the street, if his house was closer to the street, you would see the porch more. But his house, even though it is fairly close, it's still far enough back that you were not peering down onto it. There are some houses in the district that are so close that you would be looking onto their front porch. His, you do have a break. And in part, it also helps that it's raised a little bit. So based on this and what I'm hearing from other commissions, you know, we've done a test study with synthetic windows with the house on Oak Street. I think this is a really good chance to do another test study of a material and to, you know, allow it for, you know, 5 years or 10 years, but just for this house. Like the commission is can say, like, we've allowed it on this one. This is a test study. We want to see how this material does in our climate, in our district. We can follow up with Mr. Dickey and say, you know, how's it working for you? You know, it's been in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Do you like it? Is it not? Is it warping? Is it not working well? And you just use it as a test study, which is a really sort of, and then that allows us to make a determination at a later point on if it's appropriate for our district based on what he finds as he uses it.
We're doing that with some roofing material over on Jackson too, right? That simulated
Which property is it? I'd have to remember.
Brown.
Yeah.
Is it Brown? That
Yeah,
simulated
the old tiny
tile.
house,
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
That was before your time.
Okay, that's why. And then we have the one on Oak that we did right when I came in with the synthetic windows.
Yeah.
So that will allow us to sort of have a laboratory where we can wait and see. Because it does seem that the professional opinion is somewhat mixed on the material, and it might be just based on climate. And that might be what we need to see.
Are you recommending rough side up or the smooth side up?
Well, he already has it installed rough side up. So I think it's very clear from the commission representatives I spoke with that the majority of them feel rough side up is problematic because it looks very artificial. Then they will turn right around and say the challenge with the smooth side is one person actually gave me a picture of a banana peel and they said get ready because they said if you get any water on it you will break your head open because, and it's very slick, you probably noticed. Yeah. So I think in this case it's the commission would, if it lasts and he says hey, you know, it's worked well, then the discussion could be, all right, if the smooth side up doesn't work and the rough side up has some aesthetics where it doesn't blend with the district, maybe we approve it on rear porches, maybe we approve it on front porches when they're not as visible like this one. But if it was a different type of front porch, it might not be appropriate. If he comes back in a few years and says, oh my God, this stuff is awful, I don't like it, well, and this is why, and the commission says, oh yes, you're right, then that's an easy, like, we tried it, it's not working, and, you know, it won't be on the list anymore. So I would say, you know, go ahead and approve it with the faux texture up if you feel that's appropriate, because I think the commission is well buffered on this one because they're really working with trying to figure out how to work with some alternative products. And you probably remember we had that workshop on it last year when we brought in the specialist from the LA Conservancy on alternative materials. So.
Will you report to us and let us know?
Yes, absolutely. The reason I did it, I don't know if that picture's in there. This is about the third time I've replaced the porch, and it's been tongue and groove, wood, treated every time. I mean, we've been in that house since 1991. Well, this time it bowed, when tongue and groove gets wet, I don't care if you paint it, stain it, whatever you do, eventually over time, it's gonna swell. Well, this time, when whoever came, they probably saw, this time, it raised up the corner post, which let the second post fall and shatter my front window.
Oh my God.
And it barely missed my stained glass. So that weekend, I replaced all of it. Because the way it faces, get more rain than anyone. I face this way. And even though my porch is angled down, it still comes because of the way it is and the way I face. And the only other house that has a wood porch on that street is the one that we own across the street. And it doesn't get as bad because it faces
opposite direction.
So that could be explaining why there's so many concrete porches.
They're all Church Street. Church Street is full of, there's no wood in there.
Well, it's just a wide alley for.
The example is, I don't know if you know, right across from Shadow Lawn, there's a little house on the corner. And I don't know if they come to you or not. You see how their porch was buckled?
Yeah.
Same thing. That's what's gonna happen. Theirs is buckled because it sits so low to the ground. And when it rains, basically it's going straight on their porch. This would be ideal for them. Now granted, it costs a lot. But, you know, for what I was gonna lose and what it cost me, you know, it cost me almost $1,000 to get the glass and the storm glass replaced. It was like 800 or something.
Yeah.
But, you know, and plus something's gotta give. Cause I was like, I've gotta find something that reflects the weather, the rain, everything. So that's, I researched it, I found it, and, you know, I spent $3,600 on the front porch. Hopefully I'll die of old age and it'll never have to be changed. But that's, some of the materials are that, you know, you don't want a continuous, you're gonna have problems. And just the way it faces and the way, the weather is, and I've had problems from day one, you know, like we had talked about. None of the, I mean, that's not even the original columns on that house. It was replaced before we bought it. We replaced the porch and kept those columns. The original wagon, I mean, they put wagon wheels from Lowe's up there, and so I made some corbels and stuff to replace all, you know, I wanted, you know, that was my goal. And as far as the square columns go,
Well, hold on, we're gonna stay on the COA and we'll get back to you on that one, so we can keep them administratively in order.
I'd like to, based on what you said as a test study, that we, I make a motion that we approve it with that in the record.
Second,
I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We're on to your porch supports. Give me a second, let me catch
you
up.
can go back to that picture, I'll explain to you why I went about this.
Okay. Okay, and we'll have you come up to the mic so they can actually catch you, because we can't
Okay.
when you're up there. So, porch supports, this is what he put in as a replacement of these chamfered posts. There were turned Victorian style porch supports on here. They were not the original, but they're in keeping with the other turned ones within the district. He would like to add scroll work components back. Here's my sample. Pass that around, so you have to imagine that placed up there.
I made those with a router.
And trim out the bases, which means he would put quarter or shoe.
Probably, I mean, whatever, y'all, I
Something,
mean,
okay.
I had an idea, but just.
Okay. So the design review standards, porches retain historic components, historic porch columns, railings, or other details should be retained and repaired as needed. Replace missing or deteriorated components in kind. Where porch columns, railings, and other details are deteriorated or missing, new components should duplicate the historic components in design and craftsmanship. So at the time of the site visit in March 2021, most of the porch components were piled into the trailer for disposal. None of the porch supports photographed were in a state that staff could see for complete replacement, but they clearly were not original, so staff has gone. The Victorian era, you normally find the turn porch supports because the Victorians liked their curlicues. You find chamfered more with sort of an older style. I did go and look for earlier pictures of this house. This is a 2007. It still had the porch railing in 2007. And you can see those are the turned porch supports. This is a photo from 1991 when the district was created. I think those are the wagon wheels you're referring to that are up there.
Yes.
And so that shows you the turned porch supports. And that's what you typically see within the district. Staff historically, when they have had applicants that have wanted to, when staff has worked with the commission, when they've had applicants that have wanted to change out their porch supports, and we've had some where people had columns and they wanted turned posts, the commission has always said that without historical documentation, if what was on there was appropriate for that period, that design would be continued. So I know that was done with Lyerly. That was the one where they had wanted to put turned posts. And when they went to look for historic photos, they couldn't replicate anything along those lines. The only chamfered images I found, and they're in the packet, I don't have them on the screen, it's a house over on, it's either Canal or Oak, that is actually listed as non-contributing specifically because of its new porch with the chamfered porch supports. That was called out in the most recent district survey. And so this is what was on there.
Were these porch porch supports on when we did our last pass-through of the people looking, you know, at Old Decatur and Albany? It was recent.
When they went through, no, the chamfered ones were not on. It was the turned posts that were on. Okay. And the house that they called out as non-contributing in part because of the front porch remodel had the chamfered posts, but this house did not at that time.
So that might come off of the listing. I mean,
Well, it would
because
get
of this,
noted,
if
yeah, it
we
would
do
definitely, if a surveyor saw it and they recognized it, it would definitely get noted as something that was probably new and not necessarily compatible for the house. Because that happened on one house within the district this last year. I mean, when the surveyor went through, they caught it, they caught the design, and they said, hey, the porch has had some updates. So.
John, no way to get pictures before 1991? Any older pictures?
I don't think so. Is that the one from the packets that?
No, this one actually came from planning. I feel like people are cleaning out their attics and basements, and now I'm getting all these goodies from across the city. These are those huge boards that are in my office right now. This is when the district was created. So all these photos were taken in 1991. That's probably when they did the first design review standards, is they were getting ready to do it, and they were trying to figure out what the vocabulary was in the district.
Chris, one of the things that we're dealing with is when changes like this are made to the house and they become non-contributing, then it shrinks our district. And
If I understand, if you can go back to the picture beside my house where it shows the Nungaster house next door.
Hold on.
One more, you can really see it. It's in there somewhere. Right below.
That's probably
the layout of my house and that house are almost identical.
Yeah.
And they have square posts. And I mean, if you stand in the street and look at mine and look at their house, the way it's built, now at some point they put a concrete porch and they added the carport. And I don't even know when that would happen, but the layout and the build of that are almost identical. So that was my, with the square. Now granted, it's got masonite on theirs and they've got it covered so you don't see the lapboard side. But she actually is the one who bought that house and redid it when we first bought it. She lives next door. And so I asked her about the house, and she bought it when the house was falling in. But at some point in time, a lot of these houses were left and just sat there and started falling in.
Right.
And this was one of them. And she bought it and redid it. So what you're seeing in that picture for sale is what they did with the columns and the wagon wheels and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really what it was done, initially.
I guess my main concern about it is if we're gonna lose that one as a.
Well, I don't want to lose it. If
contributing
it comes down to losing it, I'll change it.
I think the way the commission has historically handled this to keep the process very simple and as fair as possible to all applicants, if what is on your house currently, regardless of age, is historically appropriate for that time period, so like those turn posts could be fairly new, but they are historically appropriate for that time period, the commission has always said that they stay unless you have a historic photo 50 years old or older that shows there was a different design there. So that's what the commission has ruled before. So like I remember with Lyerly, they had wanted turned posts. They had square 1960 tapered. And the commission said, unless you can bring us other evidence. And I had looked at it and told her I was pretty sure there were round columns on it originally. She found the 1920s or 1930s photo and there were round columns on it originally. And so that's what they went back with. Because I think the commission has felt that makes it much simpler administratively, because otherwise if people say, oh, my house is Craftsman and I don't know what was on here originally, but I like that Craftsman style and there are Craftsman houses that have it. And next thing you know, you get 10 Craftsman houses in a row that all have the exact same replicated feature.
Right.
And the commission said that they just didn't, that was a lot to start occurring within the district, and that this was sort of the most fair way to approach it, is what I have been told before when I have spoken to the commission about it.
So in 91, it had the columns that we saw that had been taken down.
Well, no, all that has been replaced once already.
Yeah, so 91 had the turn post columns.
And that's when
And
the district was
2007,
surveyed and it was deemed a contributing?
Yeah, and it was deemed contributing in 91.
Okay.
And it was deemed contributing this year when this computer and when it had these porch supports, which are also they're your standard Victorian era turned porch supports. And it was deemed contributing with those.
I don't know what the neighbor's house, if it's contributing or when they were put in, or if it was before the commission was formed, but.
Well, there's only 2 people that's ever lived in that house, that White House. The Nungesters, she lived there their whole, I mean, that family was there their whole life, and now the lady who had my house has it, and that's been it. So it's just been, I mean, I don't know what all's changed on it, but there's only been, it hadn't been like circulated through bought, sold, redone.
So the house next door, I haven't looked at the documentation recently, but I know from reviewing it a while ago, there was discussion of that porch and carport being an early 20th century addition. So either they took the original porch and extended it, or they may have had to rebuild the whole thing. And then it comes under contributing for that era, because at that point it's like a 1920s to 1940s change, and it's still within that period of significance for the district. So that's what the commission is looking at, is when is that period of significance. So if they had made a change that was considered really drastic in the 1980s or 90s, like the house that just got said it was non-significant, that's one that was a 1980s or 90s change. That's when the surveyor catches it and says it's very recent and it's outside the boundaries.
Any more discussion?
I think the turn columns are appropriate for this house, and I would hate, since it's just been evaluated, hate to lose this as a contributing house.
I mean, it's just 5 columns, it's not, I mean, it's not that big of a deal to switch them around.
Motion. So the way this needs to go is, if we move to approve the COA.
Amend it.
We can amend it?
You can amend it.
Okay. I'll move to approve the COA as amended.
With
the
turn.
Okay. Yeah.
You gonna address the,
Yeah, and he's allowed to do the scroll work to put that back up, because that is appropriate for this period, and this design is fine. This is within this, okay. And if he wants.
How does it fit up against is there enough street?
Oh, it goes, yeah,
Yes.
they have, yeah, it's either square at the top.
Okay.
There's a little square section at the top, and they go in there, and then there's a little, and if he wants additional gingerbreading, do you want him to refer back to me, and we can go off of older photos, and if it's beyond that, he can come back in front of the commission?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Chris, so I will send you out the paperwork on that. You're good to go on the fence in the backyard, you're good to go on the decking. We're gonna come have a porch party so we can all check it out at some point.
Now, when you say, is there any, as long as it's turned, it doesn't matter what they look like, right? As long as part of it's turned? I mean, I don't want to replace them with something, then y'all go,
Bring me the image and I can compare them with the photos, and if I feel it's beyond my scope, I can touch base with the commission. But most of what you can get on the market now should be appropriate. So you and I can talk, you can shoot me an email.
Do they have to be wood?
Okay.
They have to be wood. We turned.
No, that's fine, I'm just making sure.
Okay.
And what size are they?
Well, they're 6 inch. Base is 6 inch, they were 6 inch, I took off.
Can you
All right.
turn them? I mean, you did that
Well,
that fancy work right there.
Good, I guess.
But they're gonna start sending people your way, you know that, right?
I know.
Just get ready, because it's
Look,
coming.
wait till you see the inside.
Oh, I think he just volunteered for the Christmas tour, whoever's running that.
Write it down.
Yeah, I've got a ton inside that house. I'm talking about a ton.
Oh.
So,
All right.
and I did, you know, it's been a very lengthy process, but, I've sunk a lot, and did a lot.
will touch base with you starting next week. I'll get you all that signed paperwork, and then you and I can touch base when you're ready for those porch supports. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're actually going to shift a little on the agenda, and we're going to move into new business briefly, which is the Albany Commercial Resurvey, on 2nd Avenue. As the commission is aware, we received a CLG grant from the state. There's a federal pass-through grant to resurvey the Albany district, which had not been resurveyed. It's not been surveyed again since it was first created in '95.
Could y'all take that discussion outside?
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, can I have this button?
Let me get a photo of it so I know what it is, and then you can take it back, because I don't think I have it in the application, because I had a hard copy of it. Here you go. No, I'll take it back.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Resurveying the Albany district. So it's a little hard to see on this map, but the original district is sort of gerrymandered here. So it's mostly on 2nd. It follows 2nd very closely, and there's a small piece down Moulton. Of course, this is before Mellow Mushroom and Moe's Barbecue went in, because this is from '95. For the full survey boundaries, we extended it because we wanted to look at the broadest commercial swath possible. So we go from Lee all the way down here to by the Episcopal Church, and then we're all the way out at 6th Avenue, and then we cut back all the way back by the farmer's market, essentially very close to there, to look at every possible building to see what we can get. Everything that's crosshatched here, those are parking lots. So those are automatically not going to assist in our count. And there are additional parking lots that are, these are lots that are nothing but parking lots. So the actual lot has no building on it, it's just parking lot. So to talk a little bit about the survey and how she moves through, and she's already been out in the field for sort of 2 days now, is, Jamie and I saw, here she is. And I'll let her come up and speak with the commission.
Hello, I'm Jamie Dustifano. I'm a preservation consultant, initially out of Nashville, Tennessee, but I just moved to Texas earlier this year, or last year. So I'm very happy to be here. I got here earlier this week and started my field work and research. You'll have a great historic city, and I'm really excited to be working on this project, and thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this. I'm just going to quickly go over the objectives in case you guys aren't familiar with the purpose of the project, and then just kind of the deliverables that we'll have throughout the process. I believe the contract ends, everything has to be finalized by August, I believe, or September. So the field work is the first step, photographing every building from the public right-of-way, and documenting any apparent changes to the buildings. We're doing the resurvey of the already National Register listed district, as well as the immediately surrounding area, which Caroline has the map there showing. Each building will be evaluated in terms of its historic integrity, and then assessed for contributing, non-contributing status. And then we'll make recommendations for National Register potentially expanding the historic district or decreasing its boundary because of loss of buildings. I've come across a few during my field work where the buildings are no longer there, and a couple changes, new buildings. So the survey report will be the final product that'll kind of go over all of our findings and make those recommendations. Some of the other deliverables, we'll have a very thorough spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet for each parcel within the survey area. We'll have a date of construction, address, parcel number, and then the recommendation for contributing status. And then the historic context will be in the survey report, and we'll really focus largely on the mid-20th century development. The National Register nomination really talks through to 1941, so we'll just kind of expand upon that existing context. And then y'all get digital photographs for all the buildings, and then survey forms as well will be prepared. So I'm here to answer any questions. The field work will be done tomorrow morning. I'm almost done. And then I'll get started on all the paperwork, which is a lengthy task. Any questions?
Well, she met with me.
I
at the
did.
yard class
Okay.
earlier today, so.
Very helpful, very helpful. Got a lot of good.
Got lots, and the photographs are, you know, that's not gonna be a problem.
Okay.
Everything's documented very well. I think it's just on us to, you know, give her what assistance we can as far as the history of the buildings and what alterations were made.
And there's an abundance of, the historic photographs are just excellent sources to refer to and kind of document how these buildings have changed over time. We've got all the photographs from I think it was 1995 when the district was listed. So I've got the photographs from that nomination, which is really helpful because it's been almost 20 years since it was last surveyed and listed on the National Register. So
I didn't mention to you also Caroline found over here a bunch of photographs from, was it planning department or not?
That was building, are any of
Building
those commercial?
department,
So,
yeah.
are some of those commercial? I thought they were all residential.
There
mostly.
are some commercial.
There are some commercial,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's not every property in the district, but there's bound to be.
Great.
Actually, there's quite a bit of Second Avenue.
okay, great. Yeah, send them my way. We've got the Dropbox file, so
Okay.
just start scanning.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we'll be in touch throughout this whole process once I start working on each individual building, documenting those.
I did note the shape of the district we're doing, this is Fourth coming down here. Is that right? Yeah. So there's the Ball Valley Smith.
Yes, that's the one you.
So this won't be in it, right? That little vintage faith church? That's
That, I believe,
outside
is
of it.
within Albany residential.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is the boundary for Albany
I was just
residential.
curious. Because that building's actually older than we thought it would. Start out as a congregation.
Oh, wow.
1888.
Yeah, and this is just, I mean, this is a survey area, so it's not even a proposed boundary. There
Yeah.
could be a boundary reduction in some areas, there could be an expansion in
Mhm.
others. And that, she will make recommendations, but that call will ultimately be based later after the state reviews the documents. And then I will meet with the National Register Coordinator to decide what the next step is. And if we go in and do a formal boundary adjustment, which is very different from updating the period of significance. Updating the period of significance is, it's paperwork, but a boundary adjustment is a full-on call to property owners, and it's a public process. It's very different. And normally, the way the state does that is they will do a survey 1 year, they sit and let it rest for a year so their staff has the ability to review it. Because you can't do a National Register nomination after you've done a survey, because you have to apply for money to do the National Register nomination before they've had time to even read the survey to know if it qualifies. It just happens to be where the grant cycle hits with them. So there'll be a survey 1 year, then they have time to look at it and decide yes or no, and then the following year, if you decide to go further, that's when then they would go and look at funding and discussing possibly changing boundaries and things like that.
And my survey report would include recommendation for possible period of significance, extension.
Do we have something similar to this from the last time it was surveyed? I mean, the surveyed area is increasing with this particular survey, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you look,
But
on
what
there.
I'd be interested to see is the change in parking
Oh,
areas, the
parking?
hashtag.
No,
that-
we don't have anything that detailed. So survey forms from the 70s, 80s, and 90s are, be totally honest, as someone who does the field work, and I'm sure
Scribbles.
Judy, you get them and you're almost like, oh no, you just made like my workload heavier with no more data.
Yeah.
Because it's stuff for us to read, but they didn't have GIS, the things that we now use.
Right,
Is the
yeah.
difference between like dot matrix versus an iPhone.
Right.
I mean, so the data that we're getting out on that end is, so we don't have it on the parking lots. It doesn't exist really.
But I'll go through Sanborn maps and kind of just, briefly touch on the developmental history based on Sanborn maps and historic aerial photographs and what's there now. And just kind
too
of
that I didn't show you.
perfect. Bring them on.
So I've got some-
Yeah, because John, the Sanborn maps, 55? When's the most?
61.
63
Oh,
is the
63.
very latest
Okay.
update that's listed in the front of the Sanborn set
Okay.
that we have. So I don't know
That's
if they
great. So-
updated the entire thing. in
So
63.
if parking lots went in after 63, unless we have an aerial map, we don't have good documentation on exactly when something became a parking lot.
Most of the aerials
Yeah.
are going to be earlier, but I have the good shots of downtown, the 50s, maybe.
That's
Some good
fantastic.
ones.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, especially when they did the new Decatur and they did City Hall, they were very
There
proud.
may be some from the early 70s, yeah.
Yeah, so
Well, I'll take
there's some good data there. But I mean, part of the reason for this is to look at having the ability for tax credits for some of the developers who might get some of these fabulous mid-century banks. You know, those are very large buildings, and if they're eligible for tax credits, that's a pretty substantial incentive for working with those structures. But as they're now, they're not listed as eligible. It also allows for ad valorem tax reductions. So if you have a building and it's within a National Register district, or if it's even a standalone, you have the ability, as long as you don't change the exterior appearance of that building in any way that's deemed harmful, to file for a 50% property tax reduction, and it's permanent as long as the building remains contributing or keeps its status. So that's a pretty powerful, but this is a tool to get people to that place, to allow us to be able to offer those sorts of incentives, so.
Right.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, so now we've got, I meant to show this, Jamie has seen this, but this is, I was able to get the planning department to overlay parking so that's an aerial photo and everything's shaded in. So if you look, and this is Johnston and 4th, it's between Moulton and Johnston. The crosshatched ones, these are individual lots that are nothing but parking lots. Like that's it, the whole lot is a parking lot. Ones that you have the aerials, it shows, okay, the lot, part of the lot has a building and then part of the lot is a parking lot. So it really starts to show you how the plats work, where, you know, you're starting to look at these maps. So the GIS person, we are having so much fun with this project. Like, I go see him all the time, and I'm like, you're like the best GIS map person ever, because he produces these amazing maps for us. So I'm just thrilled with them. Preservation Month planning, got behind on that this week because of other things we've been working on. I will send everyone an email out with, I've gone through and looked at all the projects that have been completed in the past year. And I think there's a handful for some small awards. There's some for people, and maybe 1 or 2 larger building projects. I'll send those the commission's way. If you have any more to add, let me know. We can vote on them next month. We've had a proclamation by the mayor before. We're looking at trying to do an April walking tour for the April month. Anything else we should look at doing?
I think, either in Historic Care Association or maybe Kristen Probst, just talking about coming back with a walking tour or a garden tour or something.
Oh, I don't know, I hadn't heard anything about it.
Said so, no.
Month of
I don't want to say
April
too much
is-
about it, because I don't want to be in charge of it.
April, that's the walking tour month.
Yeah, that's
so
the
maybe-
that's state tourism.
state thing.
It's like 200 different walking tours or something across the state. And it never fails. Like, I'll be giving one and it's the weekend, like, man, I wish I could go listen to that one, and I'm not able to go.
Well, who, I mean, we have them every year. Who?
Breland has done them. I have done them. Peggy Towns has done them.
Okay.
John, have you done them before?
I have not.
Oh, now
Yeah.
see, looky there. Oh, he
You're
paused.
gonna
Did
get
you
lots
notice
of
that long
practice
pause?
for
I don't want people to not show up for the one I'm doing next week.
But
Oh, but see, that's February.
Until after that's
Yeah.
over with.
Yeah, see now, yeah, John's in trouble now.
Yeah.
So I'm coordinating with Breland, and they historically have alternated between Old Decatur and Albany, and I've done one for each, and for the life of me, because the pandemic messed everything up, and I can't remember what I did last time, so.
Well, nobody else will either.
That's true.
That's
So,
good news.
but anything else we should look at doing, any other? I can get lined up on a proclamation. I can pull the verbiage and send that to the mayor's office to get ready for.
I love that. I love the I Heart.
The I Heart Decatur. Do you want to run that contest again?
I think it would be
I Heart
fabulous.
Decatur? Okay. So for those of you that weren't with the commission before, and of course I'm going to assume you all know of this fabulous social outreach program that we did a few years ago, Yes, so this is when I was a consultant for the commission, but I still have the files. You know what, well, let me think, that's cool. See if it lets me on. I don't know if it'll let me, I think it's my computer, so it's.
You go to the city page.
Okay.
It has the coloring book down there.
Okay.
If you're looking for the logo.
So I can't get, I was gonna see if I could pull up Facebook on here, but it doesn't, it's allowing me to pull my computer desktop, but it doesn't recognize that it's me to go on, because I run the Facebook page for the city on this. But what I can find, whenever it decides to upload, is, where's our downloads page? Several years ago, we did a logo, and it's on this booklet, but it was for a separate project, and it was the I Heart Decatur. So Macomb Group did a really fabulous design with a heart. Here we go. And we had posters made at different businesses. Now that might not work as well with COVID, but we were having people go out and take a picture of themselves in front of their favorite building. Everyone that was on the commission at the time, I shanghaied them. I think, Barbara, we didn't get your picture, but we got Delano. We got
I was in it. Well, maybe you did.
Yes, and then with Bill, we got you in front of Stone Lumber, where it had been. I went out and we got Breland in front of Old State Bank. So
I was in front of St. John's.
You were in front of St. John's, so be prepared to start thinking of your favorite historic building for your candid camera moment. And sort of what that means. You know, John's lucky he's in front of archives, but you know, if you did it last time, I'm going to make you find a different building. I'm just going to warn you right now. So, and it would be great to think outside the historic core. You know, I get dibs on Simpsons, because that's my favorite pink and green building. So, but just sort of think through that, and you know, Point Mallard. I might go get Jason Lake in front of Point Mallard because it's 50 years old.
But I can't remember if we encouraged the public to get involved.
We did, and we gave some prizes.
Okay.
So let me go talk with Downtown Decatur Development Authority and see if some of the businesses might be willing. St. McGee's had given some prizes before. I think High Point had given, and I'm pretty sure there was a third. But let me do some digging. So let me write that down on my action item list. And we might even be able to get some of the artists that were involved in the children's booklet to do some to get them in some of them too. All right, staff updates on compliance. 510 Walnut, that is Hereford, the former Hennessy site. We are still working on that one. Letters have gone out. We have not heard from him yet. 714 Line, that is an Orr property, but it's managed by Peterson. They have been reminded that they are out of compliance. That's the one where they sawed off the porch columns on the bottom. The Bank Street Old Decatur resurvey. The forms are mostly finished. I'm updating everything to upload them to the state. There is a recommendation to expand the period of significance. There is also a recommendation for boundary reduction because there is no commercial design review and Bank Street is showing it. So they're looking, the tentative, I think the recommendation was to pull 4 blocks out total within the district, maybe 4.5. Actually, it was larger than that. I think that the final recommendation was more like 6 or 7. I've been talking to the state. The state's a little more conservative. They think they can take out maybe 3 to 4, but the state made it quite clear, like, you will have a boundary reduction because if you've just lost integrity with no design review on Bank Street. So we have discussed that, and when that final boundary is set, you know, I'll let you see the map.
What would be our chances of doing design review or getting design review for our historic commercial areas?
So we did have a letter come in from a property owner on Bank Street asking about what the process would be. it is a political process, and so it requires the public to support it, because it is a change in your ordinance, so council votes on it, which means you need a majority of council, and it means that council, and it doesn't matter if it's our council or anyone else's council, because I've worked on these with other municipalities, and I've seen them work and I've seen them fail. I've been on both ends of it, and you have to have the majority of property owners. Typically, councils want to see 60%. They know not everybody's going to want it. They know that. But they want to see a majority, and 60% is typically where they go. So normally, it's a lot of door-to-door getting signatures. Can you get 60%?
I think key is going to be, I don't mean to interrupt you, I was just going to say, I think key is showing people how we've lost something that could have been an asset. You know, think about the downtown or hotel and the way that they changed the stucco on the facade of that thing on 6th Avenue. I don't know that it would qualify for anything, but if it could have been so cool, you know, to have this mid-century hotel, or the First Federal Building. Now progressive, you know. I don't know if she's going to find that contributor, because all that work was done in the 90s. Much less, you know, what Wells Fargo did there on the corner of Bank and Church, you know, which looks good, but it took it off the register. You know? So, I mean, it's not necessarily, I think when people get an understanding that, we're losing something, and it's translating to money, you know.
That's the public education that has got to be done.
That's how you get that
Yeah.
And I think, and it's something, and I need to be really clear on this, because sometimes people assume, oh, you have a staff person. The municipality, like, I am a staff person for the city. So I'm the person that if someone comes to me and says, I want this, then I'm like, oh, these are the tools. But as the city, I'm not the one getting the signatures, if that makes sense. Like, because I'm representing sort of all the property owners in this, and so I'm much more neutral than that. So we have had people ask about pulling design review from south of the park. We had that request 2 years ago, and I met with them, and I said, okay, this is what's needed. You're going to need photos, you're going to need signatures, and that sort of fizzled out. It may have been they didn't have enough support, because I asked, I said, okay, what do your neighbors think? Like, well, they don't speak English, it's a rental. And I'm like, okay, then you have absentee landlords. And they historically are not supporters. I have seen some municipalities where you have absentee landlords, and maybe the majority of them, the majority of owners in the district say no, and council has said, this is our heritage, this is our city, you're not voting here, you know, we want to preserve this. And that's the only time I've ever seen any elected group not be as concerned about that final number count. If you have a lot of out-of-state owners of property, then sometimes the city council is like, okay, we really want to do what's best for our residents here. But anything other than that, it's going to be up to property owners. It will be up to the commission. I'll be more than happy to help pull data for you. But it is a networking. It is a feet on the street. It is educating, you know, and if you want, I'm more than happy to do Q&As. If you want me at any civic groups, I'm more than happy to do that. But that is, it's a process, and you're going to want that 60%, and it's important. You want some of the people that are going to be your best advocates you need to have with you.
We know what percentage of the property owners on Bank Street are out of town?
No, I can pull that for you though. I can, that's easy. You can go to Morgan County Archives, and all that's public record. When you put in the address, it tells you where the taxpayer notice goes.
I would think that would be really telling right there, because if you've got 60% that are out of town owners, they're not gonna.
And I don't think, the last time I looked at numbers for Bank and Second, it was predominantly local. And the handful that weren't, most of them were within the region. I wasn't seeing a lot of out of state. It's been a year or so since I looked at it, but I didn't see a lot of out of state. And you really want people to sort of understand that. Now, you always have pushback. One of the most formidable ones I ever dealt with was an urban hospital. They ended up winning that district, but it took some concessions to get it. And for people to really understand, and you know, another thing you'll hear, well, it's more review, it's another piece of paper, it's more money. We don't charge for design review. Some municipalities do. We don't. Commercial, to be honest, is a lot easier than residential. You don't have fences, you almost never have backyards, you know, the backs of buildings really aren't contributing because they're on the alley. At that point, you're mostly dealing with the facade and the doors and the windows. It's pretty basic. I would suggest if we have property owners that are getting federal tax credits or state tax credits, they are under a design review that is incredibly restrictive because they're dealing with the feds and the state. They probably would be happy to ensure that their investment is buffered by others in the community.
I would think that they would be our biggest.
They probably would be because they're
Proponent.
putting in money and they want to make sure they
Right.
get a return on investment. Any of Donovan Ripkema's work, you can look at his. He has come here and spoken to council and to the city before. He is not a preservationist, he is an economic specialist, but he deals with preservation and he has run the numbers inside out and can tell you why a local designated district, whether it's commercial or residential, has the highest return on investment across the US. He's done thousands and thousands of case studies on that. But that is, if that's something, you know, look at One Decatur, is it in the One Decatur plan? You know, people have taught you to focus on that. So those are all tools to look at, and I can give you that, but I mean, don't assume that because I'm on staff as a preservationist, oh, Caroline can't go, like that. Not only is it not within my, I can't do it legally within my job, but I also literally wouldn't have time on top of it. I mean, it does take time. And you want to talk to your key stakeholders. It won't be, you guys probably know who they are.
I think these surveys will be good.
Yeah, the surveys will be good tools.
So let's go back a minute. So who was it that you said would be a good person to come and speak?
Oh, Donovan Ripkema. He's been to the city before.
Came here just a few years.
Yeah, he was here just a few years
Spoke
ago.
at Turner Searle Center.
I think I vaguely remember that, but is it too short of a time to get him here for Preservation Month and the plan?
Yes, he's probably booked. He's an international specialist. Trying to get him would be like trying to get a major rock star. He's probably booked a year out in advance. His company is called Place Economics, but he's got books, he's got the data. I mean, he's a number cruncher. If you want nothing but numbers, and because part of the argument is not just, is it pretty, does it make me feel good? I mean, people want to hear this is their business, this is their lifeblood. So is it numbers? They're gonna look at numbers. He's your number guy. That's all he does is numbers. You can do Breland. Judge Breland is a friend of his. Socially, Judge Breland knows him a little bit. He has spoken for the state before. So I will get y'all the data. I can email y'all the ordinance and the ordinance outlays. It has to go to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will approve it, and then finally it goes to council. But you need to have everything lined up before it goes, because council isn't gonna look at it if it's just 2 people and 50 people are saying no. So you want, and you normally, when you do these, it's very sad. I mean, I saw one that failed and I kind of knew it was gonna fail. I was watching it, it was in a neighborhood adjacent to mine, and I remember talking to the preservation coordinator for the particular municipality at the time, and this was the 3rd time it had failed. And he and I were having offline conversations about it, and he said, it will never happen now. He's like, this is the final death knell for this particular one. And then we had a very successful one just a year earlier in a different neighborhood, and he and I were comparing notes, like, why did this one work? Why didn't this one work? And sometimes it's the players. And, you know, he and I went back and forth, and I remember saying, like, do you think it's ever gonna make it? And he's like, it'll take 30 years before anyone's gonna touch it, and by then there won't be enough integrity left. You know, he said, and he was really honest about it. He's like, I won't be here. He's like, you won't be here. He's like, another group of people are going to have to deal with this one, and he's like, but I don't think it'll have the integrity by then. So, and it is. I mean, I think Decatur's really unique. It has 2 downtowns. I mean, that's like the most fabulous thing ever. And it might be that one district is more interested in hearing it than another district. It might say, hey, we don't want to tackle 2 at once. Maybe we just want to look at 1. So I'll pull the ordinance. I'll send y'all the ordinance, and you can look at it. I'll be happy to field questions. And I can put you in touch with some people that might be able to answer additional questions on that. And find who your allies are, and don't go to your public officials until you have everything ready. You know, in terms of, you know, enough to be able to go to them. I mean, you can always say you're thinking of it, but they're gonna, normally what happens is they send you back to me, which is what happened with south of Delano. It was okay, they had talked to Christy, because it was Christy at the time who was District 2, and she had called me, and then she sent them to me, and then it just sort of, we had about 3 meetings, and then it just sort of went quiet after that. So that's finishing up the Bank Street Old Decatur. Federal grant updates, we have the Albany survey, the Princess HSR LAS comes into town the end of February. They're gonna crawl over the Princess from one end to the other. We're very excited about that. Public outreach pamphlets, I still have drafts. I haven't even gotten to the designer yet because things in the past few weeks have been very pressing with my time. The state grant updates, the Little Scout, Girl Scout house, I talked to Park and Rec today. They're gonna do some site clearing to remove overgrown landscape, and then they're gonna get ready to paint in the spring.
Hey.
And then I have a little bit of grant money left. I'm trying to see what we can do about getting replacement doors, but I think they're gonna have to be custom made, so I'll be asking LAS if they have suggestions, because they also have to be sturdy enough so they can't be broken into. So we can't be putting wood doors in that location. So it's gonna require a very specific profile. So that might be something that waits a year or two till we can get more funding, because it might require beyond what we have. Historic Decatur Street Signage Project, I'm still waiting to hear back from GIS. They've been mapping out every single sign within that district. And to see, when I had spoken with some of our municipal leaders, they thought there might be some funding available that we can look at. We have some state leaders that are looking at matching funds for that. I'm still waiting to hear back from 6th Avenue to hear what will happen on that portion of it. Historic Decatur Association street trees, I have not heard an update from them on that yet, so I don't know where that stands. Tax credits, Simpsons cleared the first round. It has been sent to the feds. Fingers crossed. Theirs is a very complicated one because of the roof line, but everybody in the state office is ecstatic over that building. They're very excited with it. I've been approached about 3 other tax credits, 2 on Bank Street and 1 just outside the current Albany district, but within the resurvey zone. Federal grants, those requests are due next week, so I'm finalizing my paperwork. That's the Survey Austinville, update our design review standards so we can deal with things like alternative materials and have them in the standards, and to do an HSR for Delano Park, all of the stone structures. I don't know if we'll get funding for all of those. We might have a hard decision to make. They might say they'll fund 2 out of the 3. We'll wait and see. We won't know for a few months. And I think that is everything.
Anybody have anything else? I have a motion to adjourn.
How about Mr. Kennedy? You got an update on that? Nope.
No, not beyond Monday night. So he'll be coming back to the commission. I sent him an email today.
Bill, do you know the results of Monday? You might want to catch him up on.
So council tabled it and they voted to send him back to the commission. So I know. So he's coming back again. I sent him an email today. When I spoke with Commission Architect and Chair, sort of making sure we had the right application materials from him. One of the claims he's making is that there are water issues in that yard and that retaining wall is to address it. So they want to see a professional engineering report to address what the conditions are, what the challenges are, how that wall would fix it, like what would be needed structurally to fix that. And an actual site plan, a measured site plan, because the numbers that we often get vary from visit to visit and from what is built versus what has been laid out. So the commission sort of at this point says they want to see a site plan that's actually measured out. So I have not heard back from him since I sent that email. He wasn't sure if he could make a March meeting, so he might not be coming till April, but he has to get a full packet submitted first. So when I hear back from him and we have a full packet, he will be back in front of the commission.
Okay. We do have a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Sure.
Come on, somebody.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you. So, people.
The end is not the hardest part.